regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Glad you're with us today. We are going to be talking about some infringements. Now, we were originally going to talk with Mark Pinnock of Maryland Shall Issue about what's going on in Maryland. Mark's going to join us on Thursday's Cam and Company because he didn't get back home until after 2 a.m. This was a long committee hearing in Annapolis on Tuesday, and not good news for gun owners, by the way, but we're going to talk with Mark about that on tomorrow's episode of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. Today, we are going to talk about, another infringement. This time, perhaps a First Amendment infringement. Yeah. What part of shall not be infringed do you not understand? This T-shirt is at the heart of a new federal lawsuit filed in Iowa. The Des Moines Register reporting a Johnson High School censored a pro-Second Amendment T-shirt, according to the claims of this student, identified in this federal lawsuit only as a B. According to the complaint, AB had an issue with her teacher, Thomas Griffin, in his senior government class back in August of 2022. According to the complaint, 2 days before the student wore this T-shirt in question, Griffin, quote, had a discussion with his senior government class about their free speech rights, or lack thereof, while they were on school grounds. Griffin told his students that although they had some right to free speech, that right was, quote, extremely limited when these students stepped on school property. Griffin told his students that their teacher, in this case him, would decide what was acceptable speech in the classroom. And with respect to clothing, the lawsuit says, which was at the very core of the Tinker case, a case dealing with free speech that originated also in Iowa, a case, by the way, that Griffin had just talked about in class. Griffin told his students that he would not allow students to wear any clothing that depicts guns, alcohol, or any other, quote, inappropriate material. The lawsuit goes on to say that AB knew that Griffin was wrong about the scope of the First Amendment, so the next time she had Griffin's government class on September 1st of last year, she wore a shirt to school that said, "What part of shall not be infringed do you not understand?" with a depiction of a rifle underneath. And we've already seen that photo, but there it is again. The lawsuit goes on to say that AB had worn the shirt to school before with no complaints from students, teachers, or administrators. And AB's brother, who graduated from Johnston High School in 2019, had worn the same shirt to school multiple times with no complaints. The lawsuit also points out that Griffin, who teaches the Bill of Rights, knew that the shirt was quoting the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and he knew that it was a commentary on gun control efforts. Nevertheless, the lawsuit claims he claimed that the shirt violated the school's dress code, and he removed AB from the classroom, sending her to the school administrator's office. So once she gets to the office, she ends up having a discussion with school administrators. And at one point, an assistant principal told her that the picture of the gun could be perceived as threatening. And even though that nobody but nobody but the teacher, Griffin, had objected to the shirt, quote, "We don't get to choose how our words or our actions make people feel." Yeah. So AB contacted her mom, Janet Bristow, who went to the school where she and AB spoke with the associate principal, Zimmerman, associate principal Klein, and eventually the principal of the school, Principal Woods. AB and her mom explained to the three vice principals, or the assistant principals, that AB's shirt was quoting the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, a point that they should have already understood. The lawsuit says, and one that Griffin, a government teacher, well understood. But again, they responded with that, well, we don't get to choose how our words make other people feel. Interestingly enough, the lawsuit says that evening, Johnson County School District Superintendent Laura Kaser, called Janet Bristow, the student's mom, to apologize. And then shortly after that phone call, there was a email from the school to apologize, stating that the principal now, quote, recognizes that this is considered political speech. So the student's mom asked the school officials that the teacher also apologize to AB and address the students in his class, since they knew that she had been removed from the classroom because of her shirt. and informed them that he was wrong in claiming that the shirt was not protected speech. The lawsuit says, without addressing the class, Griffin left the impression with his students that AB was wrong and that her opinions were not welcome in the classroom. And to date, he has refused to apologize to the student or to address the claim, or to address the class, rather, that his wrongful removal of AB from the classroom should not have taken place. So the lawsuit is seeking some specific remedies here. They want a declaration that wearing clothing depicting a firearm in a non-threatening, non-violent manner is protected under the First Amendment. They want a permanent injunction prohibiting the defendants from restricting students from wearing clothing in school that depicts firearms in a non-violent, non-threatening manner. Then they want some compensatory, nominal, and punitive damages, if possible, attorney's fees and costs, and cost under the Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 54 and any other applicable authority. Basically, again, they want, it sounds to me like an apology. They want to make it clear that this was wrong and that it won't happen again. Now, do they have a case? Well, yeah, I think they do. As the Des Moines Register points out, courts in at least two other jurisdictions have decided similar cases in favor of students. In 2020, two Wisconsin students sued their district after being asked to remove shirts depicting firearms. That lawsuit initially dismissed by a federal judge who ruled that the district's policy banning images of firearms applied equally to pro and anti-gun rights messages. But last year, an appeals court reversed that decision, finding that wearing the shirts was a political statement and that the district needs more than just, quote, mere speculation to prove that wearing them will actually disrupt school operations. Eugene Volokh, UCLA law professor, First Amendment expert, knows quite a bit about the Second Amendment as well. He was involved in that Wisconsin case. He pointed to another lawsuit 20 years ago against a Virginia school district in which an appellate court there, quote, struck down a school's ban on clothing that depicts firearms in a very similar context. And he told the Des Moines Register in an email, I think this lawsuit is likewise likely to prevail. I hope so. Interestingly enough, the Des Moines Register talked with the woman at the heart of the Tinker case. That was that free speech case back in the 1960s in which a student wore a black armband to school to protest the Vietnam War and eventually was again, disciplined for that, sued, and eventually won her case. According to the Des Moines Register, Mary Beth Tinker, again, the plaintiff in Tinker versus Des Moines, says that she thinks the Johnston district is likely to win. She said, quote, under the Tinker decision, there's ample room for the censorship of messages that impinge on the rights of others, the often overlooked second part of the Tinker test. And she said that conduct by the student which for any reason involves substantial disorder or invasion of the rights of others is, of course, not immunized by the constitutional guarantee of freedom of speech. I have a feeling that Mary Beth Tinker doesn't really like the message. I have a feeling that Mary Beth Tinker perhaps is, a gun control fan and therefore not necessarily inclined to view this student's T-shirt the same way she viewed her own black armband. However, that second part of the Tinker test that she talks about, conduct by the student which for any reason involves substantial disorder or invasion of the rights of others. Well, wearing a T-shirt that, again, supports the Second Amendment does not infringe on any other rights of any other student. It's simply a First Amendment expression, right, of support for the Second Amendment. As for the substantial disorder, again, according to the complaint, the only person who was bothered by the shirt was Griffin. The only person who disrupted class was Griffin, not the student. A T-shirt that, again, had been worn on multiple occasions by both AB and her older brother without any issue. So as interesting as it is to hear Mary Beth Tinker's point of view here, I'm going to side with Eugene Volokh over Tinker and what I suspect, again, is her anti-gun philosophy. We'll keep our eyes out for any more updates on this story, but I have a sneaking suspicion that Johnson County might try to settle this, or at least the Johnson County Public Schools might try to settle this before this case goes to trial. But we'll keep our eyes out for any more updates. Right now, let's turn our attention to today's armed citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. We'll start there with a tragic story out of Milwaukee, where a police officer was killed in a shootout with a robbery suspect who had just been sentenced to probation. Yeah. And again, we talk about these issues every day here on this program. A criminal justice system that all too frequently delivers slaps on the wrist to violent offenders. In this case, police say that the suspect, 19-year-old Terrell Thompson, who was also killed at the scene in the shootout with the Milwaukee police, had just recently been put on probation. According to what we know right now, Thompson was sentenced on Monday of this week to a year of probation after pleading guilty to a misdemeanor hit and run charge that had been filed against him in July of 2021. Don't know if that was the original charge or if that was the deal that was offered Terrell Thompson. But again, he was a suspect in ongoing robberies and had just been sentenced to a year of probation for an incident that happened in July of 2021 when he was, again, allegedly, well, not allegedly, when he was involved in the shootout with Milwaukee police, killing one officer, wounding another, and losing his own life in the process. Today's Armed Citizen story from El Paso, Texas, where a convenience store clerk shot an attempted armed robber, according to police. Don't have a ton of details here. It happened about 12:30 in the afternoon on Monday, so broad daylight. This wasn't, some sort of late night robbery attempt. At the DK convenience store, officers called to the scene after getting a 911 call about an aggravated robbery. When they got there, they learned that the suspect had walked into the convenience store, demanded money, and then displayed a weapon in his waistband. The store clerk, a concealed carry holder, although that's not necessary in Texas given the constitutional carry nature, but did have his concealed carry license, drew his own firearm, shot the armed suspect at least once. Police say the clerk is cooperating, talking to investigators. The accused robber, taken to a local hospital, said to be stable at the time. The public information officer for the El Paso Police, Robert Gomez, says no charges are pending at the moment. The only person in custody is the suspect. He said, we're going to investigate it. Depending on what occurs, more likely it'll just be presented to the DA's office, but it's too early to make determinations right now. It doesn't sound like that. I mean, it sounds like the early determinations are that this was a case of self-defense. That sounds like what neighbors and folks who live nearby believe as well. One woman named Maria Estela Ordaz telling local media, I'd say he was defending himself because it would have been his life or the life of the other guy who was going to steal. Brianna Junker, another neighbor, said, I'm going to protect myself too if I was in that situation. It's your life or his. And that's absolutely right. But, under the sensitive places language that we are seeing in a number of blue states around the country, convenience stores and gas stations are among those prohibited places for concealed carry holders. So if gun control advocates had their way, this armed criminal would have walked into the convenience store. Yeah, sure, he would have been violating the law, but he already was violating the law. The convenience store clerk, on the other hand, would have been disarmed by the law as a concealed carry holder because it would be a gun-free zone, again, if the anti-gun activists got their wishes. Finally today, our good deed of the day, in the right place, at the right time, we're able to do the right thing. We'll go back to Iowa for this story. Another teenager, this one who saved a man and his dog after the man drove off a bridge, apparently, and fell into the icy waters of a lake. Yeah, the 17-year-old was apparently ice fishing. Joe Salmon was out on the lake when he saw this car that had fallen in the water. This was East Okoboji Lake. That Jeep driven by 83-year-old Thomas Lee, who had been heading to his son-in-law's fishing shack with his 6-year-old dog Cooper. And they ended up trapped in the lake waters about 3 to 4 feet deep. Thankfully not, too deep, but bitterly cold. After Salmon noticed that the driver wasn't getting out of the Jeep, he called for emergency help on his phone, and then he walked to his car, stepped into the water, which went up to about his chest. Salmon told the newspaper he stepped on the rear bumper, tried to open the back door, but he couldn't. All the Jeep windows were closed. At that point, other Good Samaritans had stepped in to help as well. And one gave Salmon a knife. So he was able to break the glass door or the glass window there in the back of the Jeep. And from there, was able to first get the dog out. Then the 83-year-old driver couldn't get out because his foot was stuck between the seat and the center console. So Salmon said he had to pull the console up to free the 83-year-old, who got stuck once more before he was finally able to get out of the car. Besides Joe Salmon, the local sheriff's office says 30-year-old Corey McConnell, 26-year-old Cody Harrelson, 27-year-old Cody Chester, and 27-year-old Chris Parks helped pull Lee and the dog to safety. First responders took Lee to a local hospital to be evaluated, but thankfully, neither he nor his dog were injured. Salmon, meanwhile, was treated for minor cuts from the glass as he worked to get the man and his dog out of the vehicle. Local store gave him some dry clothes, and he was eventually medically cleared to keep fishing, which he did, and it was a good day. He apparently got 2 fish, as well as fishing a man and his dog out of the water. He said, "I'm happy that the man is okay and the dog was okay." He said, "It was just crazy at the time. I've never done anything like that." Well, in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. Joe Salmon, Corey McConnell, Cody Harrelson, Cody Chester, a lot of Codys there in that part of Iowa, and Chris Parks, we thank you all for your very, very good deed. That is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program as always. Again, tomorrow, Mark Pinnock with Marilyn Shalley. She's going to join us. We're going to talk about the latest infringements on the right to carry. Coming down the pike there, looks like lawmakers are intent on trying to make life miserable for legal gun owners. Meanwhile, Baltimore, 8 straight years of 300-plus homicides. Maybe they'll get around to focusing on violent criminals at some point, but likely not this year. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, I would encourage you to check out BearingArms.com. We were keeping you up to date on all of the latest Second Amendment news and information there at the website. If you like what you see, please think about becoming a VIP subscriber. I'll give you a special code here. If you go to BearingArms.com/subscribe, use the promo code GUNRIGHTS. You're going to get a significant savings on your membership, and we're going to give you exclusive content you won't find anywhere else. News stories and analysis, because your support does matter. It really does make a difference. So thank you again. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.